So we just finished up our first ever podcast, Catherine and I, and now we're making a little video for YouTube.
That was so much fun, but that was just like that was just so normal, right? And of course, nobody knows the struggle except you and I and Caroline of the internet issues we've had for a month on my end. But it was so lovely because at one point we had done a mock-up or what we thought was going to be our first podcast, but we didn't have the video. And so I'm so grateful we waited this out at your invitation on that to wait till we got all the internet issues cleared up so that I could have this video, because just to be in your presence, visually, because I'm a visual person, and then to come through this podcast like this, it's just it's even yummier than our calls for the last 3 years, because I have you right there, and I always crave you. I always crave to be in your presence, or just to get a text from you or an email from you, and I'm like, oh, there she is. It's so cute, because I always feel
like a stuffed animal, like your favorite stuffed animal. Well, the feeling is mutual for sure. And I can see that I'm rosy cheeked and just.
Why are you rosy cheeked?
I think I'm joyful. I think when I get excited and feel the energy moving, often it'll show up in my face and in my my body temperature. I wonder, I'm curious, what came forward for you in this call today? What would you say was unexpected, or was there a new awareness or connection that came forward?
Here's the beautiful thing. When we were talking about tribe, right? Where are my people? My whole freaking life was where are my people? Where are my people? And when you had made a comment about, always looking for your tribe. And of course, when I hit USM, those were my people. Those were the seekers. Those were, I could just be. It was enough to just be me and be there and be enough. And so, but I really opened to the fact that my people, were my parents, were my brother, were my circumstances, were my 5 different high schools in 4 years, was my 17 moves up till the time I was 18. That was my tribe. That tribe being those experiences that I always resisted, that I wished had, that I hated so much. At 12 years old, I was shoving ho-hos in my mouth, just trying to find some relief. And I found it through food, which, oh my God, there's going to be so many podcasts. But, I found that relief through food. I found that relief through anger too. Mm-hmm. But no matter what tools I implemented from that, that was my tribe. Mm-hmm. And I feel a very kindred, when that gestalt came upon me when you were talking, I had to be cool with it, because I was like, wow, those were my tribe too. And that was my people. But those people maybe I wanted them to be different, but that was for me. Mm-hmm. That was the way I had to have that experience growing up, mm-hmm. of parents, of brother, of grandparents, of situation, of divorce at 12, of fracture, of feeling like I had to survive, of feeling like I was never enough, or I was always too much, too loud, too fat, too energetic, too verbal, too verbose. I was always too much, and I was, or I laughed too much, or whatever it was.
Too loud. I got that
one. And my mom was always like, my mom was such a hard worker, and then she'd come home and I'd be like, where are we going? And she's, and I get today, after working 12 or 14 hours of being on my feet, if I had a child that looked at me and said, when I got home, where are we going? What can we do? What are we going to go eat? I would probably, CPS would be called. So my mom did so much better than I could have ever done. I mean, I knew not to use my womb on this planet, but you know, it was just like, I think that was the gestalt that hit me, was like, even though it was something I always resisted and wished was different, that was my people and that was my tribe. And I wouldn't be this person today without those people in those positions doing what they did and being the way they were. If you changed one thing, I wouldn't be here today, probably.
Yeah.
So I felt like, even sitting, like my face is getting hot now, like just sitting in that, there's just so much gratitude. Like if you said to me right now, Kathy, I'm going to give you this magic potion that you can drink and you can go back and redo it, that you won't be right here in this space and place with who you are and where you are in your life, I wouldn't take it. Because I like where I am. I like who I am. I'm still on the path, but I'm grateful. And so it made me even more grateful. So that was my big revelation of, where are my people? It was just a different type of people I was wanting to seek. And that made me a seeker. That was the impetus for me to start seeking, right?
Exactly. And it was the pain, right? It was the pain. Right. It was the conflict. It was the feeling separation and separate and feeling other. And I think that's one of the things that, like, the more we walk on the planet, the more people we speak to and hear from, the more we hear that all of our story is the same. Right. We all have the separation wound, because the minute we are birthed from our mothers, we are separate. Like literally, like it's that physical separation of going from mama's belly into the air. And if I understand correctly, like, you know, I mean, from a spiritual perspective, we cry because we're suffering. Like literally the minute we exit the womb, we are experiencing some level of suffering from that separation. Like we know it in our bodies, in our cells. And then our whole life, I think, one way of looking at it is that the rest of our life, we are trying to reconnect to that, almost that womb energy, right? Not the mom so much, but this womb energy. You know, one of my Adler, who is one of my psychologists that are psychiatrists, I guess, a German psychiatrist that I always reference, you know, says that people are looking for significance and belonging. Like that is the human condition. We're looking for significance and belonging. And so, you know, from that context, it's like we can understand why anybody does anything. If we're asking that question, that significance or belonging, when you got told you were too much, just like I did, exactly the same messages, right? It was like, not only did we have that separation from the womb, and then for many of us, our parents who were either depressed or distant or, you know, working, you know, I didn't see my dad, but maybe half an hour every night growing up, because he left at the house at 7 a.m, didn't come home until 7 p.m, you know, and then it was bedtime, right? My whole childhood. Whether it was that, or whether, you know, our whole conversation we just had in the podcast about why we go to religion, why we go into school environments, why we date the people we date. Like, right, we're all trying to feel that significance that we lost in some, you know, or didn't get in some way, shape, or form, or we're trying to get that belonging again. But all of us, it's almost like, again, when you're talking about, oh, my tribe isn't just the people I feel good with, it's all the people and all the experiences. Because if we look at our lives from that bigger context, there's just such a bigger possibility of coming into internal peace and understanding with everything that's happening, right? So what I love about these conversations is like, it's always expansive. They're always expansive for me. They're like, what I understood an hour ago is like, okay, I understood that. Now there's just this, and having more and more and more of these conversations, again, like there's just this expansion, and in this expansion comes this gratitude. And right, and when we feel grateful, what do we feel? We feel generous, we feel loving, we feel open, our energy shifts, and really like, and then the planet shifts, because each of us individually our energy is making an impact one way or the other, whether we like it or not. Like that's what else, I mean, that my sense is that's just the way it is. I can't explain why, but.
Well, and that's so true, because I mean, like, even at this point, like, I just took a shift, right? Like, in my own damn podcast, I just took a shift. I mean, because it came to me through this open dialogue, and this is why we do this, that, and that whole, where are my people, where are my tribe? Wait, everything is my tribe and everything is my people, because it put me right in, butt in chair right here. And I'm pretty happy with who I am. I'm pretty excited about who I can become, because I'm nowhere near done and I'm nowhere near perfect, and I'm always about shifting. And I've just had this shift in the last hour, right? So it's just this magnanimous opportunity, an invitation, that we are here with each other and a million other listeners that's on the Mental Health News Radio Network, that this is what it's all about. Like, just through these conversations and the vulnerability and the desire, like the longing. Like, I don't, like, in this moment, I'm so grateful to those people, mother, father, sperm donor, grandparents, brother, like, to have had all 5 high schools, like, to have had that experience. I'm just in such gratitude. I could almost be in tears about it, because I can tell you, this part up here, this soul heart space, got a little more of this in the realization and the shifting of, they were all your tribe, they were all your people.
So I guess one of the themes for today was gratitude. Getting to gratitude in ways that you never expected to get to gratitude.
It was like, let's see, the U-turn of gratitude. I don't know, like, because I never, like, I don't think I've ever felt such gratitude for it, like, in the position of talking about it like this today. So, I mean, it's just, and, like, take a shift.
Take a shift.
I mean,
that willingness. And I really, I want to acknowledge you for the courage to even talk about that. Like, that's one of the things that I love about you so much, is like, you just dove in there, early in the call, you mentioned your dad and called him your sperm donor. And then we kind of went on to something else. And I remember kind of noting, like, oh, that was interesting that I hadn't heard you reference your dad like that before. And then coming back into it later and really diving in a little bit, and the gratitude is opening up, and the awareness and the lens through which you're seeing it. And I also heard a little bit of, a little bit of pain, a little bit of hurt, which I think is important to acknowledge, because again, like, I think as soon as we start revealing layers, and as soon as we're able to be vulnerable and get into that gratitude, right behind there is some other layer to get vulnerable and open up into, right? And it's like,
right.
Not to be afraid of it, and not to, as you say, like we say, oh, I'm not perfect, but I think a lot of times unconsciously we're having that belief system, like we're still supposed to be. Yeah. We're supposed to be healed. We're supposed to not have any anger towards our parents. We're supposed to not feel anger at all, or whatever, as opposed to, all I'm doing, or really what we're doing here, I think, is opening up that space, creating spaciousness for us to be exactly where we are, exactly who we are in this moment, then asking more questions, doing more healing, letting go a little bit more, and then the space opening up just that much more. And then the next time, a little more, and the next time, a little more.
Expansion.
Yeah.
Conscious expansion. And we're going to talk a lot more about that, because as you and I both acknowledge and have a belief system, that's what the soul's here to do in its journey is. And it goes back to, what's the point? And the point is always conscious expansion of soul.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think it's, I think for me as a 13-year-old, it was, I'm so uncomfortable in my body, in my family, in my hometown, in my school. I'm so fucking uncomfortable. Please, God, universe, somebody, something, send me a message, show me a sign, right? Let me know that there is something beyond this. And for my relief, like at the time, it wasn't like I'm on a spiritual journey trying to figure out, all the mysteries of the universe. It was, I'm fucking in pain. I'm 13 years old and it's uncomfortable. And if this is it, I want out.
Right.
Like if this is it, I don't want to be here. Right. And I think as we've gone forward, I think the big shift for me was this, we're taught and conditioned to be in this mental, emotional, physical world, right? I have these thoughts, I have these feelings, and then I go out and I maybe do something different. Behavior management, right? That's kind of the context, right? When people actually go to decide to do some therapy, it's often like behavior management. Whereas I think the big shift for me was, look, my answer's never going to lie in the mental, physical, emotional world. I will use those areas to engage with questions, engage with my life, engage in relationships with people. But my answers are going to be in this bigger context, which is where we're asking these questions. And for a lot of people, it was, here's my religious upbringing. But what that became was still, again, in the mental and the physical world. It wasn't a spiritual journey. Often people, I certainly didn't experience that in my religion. It was more another institution, another set of beliefs to adopt, as opposed to a place to go in and deeply feel something that was being channeled through me, or understand, or even ask those questions that were bigger than could be answered in those areas. And so whether we call it our spiritual being, our energetic being, our questioning being, whatever people want to call it, it's in that realm that we're really spending our time. And we've recontextualized our lives to say we're spiritual being having a human experience. Whereas to me, growing up, my whole life, really until USM really helped me solidify, I knew it somewhere in my body, but I didn't have the language. It was, I'm a human being looking for my soul. I'm a human being hoping that I have a spiritual existence. I'm a human being suffering and like I'm hoping that somewhere I'm going to find some other meaning of my life, as opposed to flipping it around, saying I'm a spiritual being and what am I going to do with this human life? Right.
Exactly.
And from there, that's where the inquiry begins, and that's where the joy begins, because it just flips things around. Like a soul, anything in a spirit doesn't suffer. A human suffers. So when we're connected to that, to our soul, then we're simply asking questions of, why am I choosing to experience this? Or what's here to be experienced, right?
Exactly. And that was about 25 podcasts, right?
God. Oh, it never ends.
Never, and never will it. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Love it.
Should we wrap it up?
I say we wrap it up. I think it was beautiful and so shifting. I mean, we took a shift.
We did.
I love our podcast.
Me too.
All right.
All right.
You've got this shifty glow going about you. So enjoy your afternoon, and we'll get together hopefully soon and do another podcast.
Indeed.
All right, my dear. I love you.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.